So you want to hit 100k DPS. Maybe you've just been struggling to do it. Maybe it's just complicated. I'm going to show you a super easy, simplistic build to hit 100k DPS. Anyone can do it. I'm not the best player at this game. I used to be stuck at 45k DPS. I could not break that number, and when I did, I was stuck at 60k. This build will guarantee you 100k DPS. Alright, so hopping into the sets we are running, it's super simplistic. This is going to take 0 vet trials, 0 anything of that sort of nature. All the other gear, dungeon content, you know. So let's just talk about it, why I'm using it. So let's start off with our monster set, Zons. Now I know there's a lot of hype with Kjolnar at the moment, and a lot of people like it, and from my parses, Zons just outperforms. It just, on this specific build, Zons isn't the move. Maybe on other builds, I'll have to experiment with it more in the future, but for this build, I highly recommend Zons. Very good, very high damage output on this thing. Don't underestimate it. Now, it does rely a lot on your light weave, and I think your light weaving is really going to make or break this build. I think if you are to do your best at perfecting anything first, it should be your light weaving. It is very important. I will go over some of my parses, and I will show a parse and show you how important light weaving is, but even until your light weaving is above average to good after some practice, this build will be very next level. So Zon's definitely the go-to monster helmet here over Kjolnar's 100%, running double light shoulder, light helmet. Besides that, we're going to go 5-piece Reliqueen on the body. Now, this is not perfected Reliqueen because this is a mag build, so I don't think it's really needed. You don't need to do vet trials for this. This is a super easy trial set to obtain because Cloud Rest really isn't that hard. You know, like you can easily get carried through it if your DPS isn't that good yet, or whatever. I mean, it might be hard to find a group for it. Craglorn Zone Chat, very good for that. That's how I got this set, actually, is just through Craglorn Zone Chat. That seemed to work pretty well. You find a lot of people just trying to run it. So 5-piece on the body, all divines, of course. As you see, my gear is not golded out, so still hitting 100k DPS with no gold gear. With it golded, I might be able to hit 110k. That might be stretching it. We'll have to see in the future. Other than that, Pillar of Nirn. Obviously, also a very popular set with Reliqueen. A lot of people might use Whirl of Depths here, which I think is also great. I don't have it yet. I don't know the parses. I think Whirl is definitely a good substitute here if you do have it, especially in like dungeon or solo content. I would actually say Whirl might be better for the added penetration, but I actually do run this in dungeons and it seems to work just fine. I'm still hitting very high DPS even in dungeons. I think my highest was up to like 70k, which is still pretty good. But yeah, Pillar on our jewelry bar. I use Inferno Staff. You can use dual wield, and I'm sure that will add a decent amount of damage onto this. So this isn't just capped at 100k. If you want to go and above and beyond, gold out your gear, maybe use dual wield and really min-max, because I'm also a Breton, you might be able to hit even upwards of 115k on this build with the setup that we have. I can't guarantee it. I'm going to have to experiment more in the future. Maybe I'll do an update video once I, you know, have daggers and like other things and I've golded out my gear. But yeah, Pillar for our jewelry weapon set, Reliqueen on body, Zons for monster, and on the back bar, Maelstrom Inferno Staff. I've tried Harpooner's Waiting Kilt with, you know, Pillar on back bar, Reliqueen on front bar, and removing the Maelstrom Staff. It just did not work for this build. It didn't. I wouldn't recommend it. It really, I lost quite a bit of damage, about 13,000, putting me around 90k instead of 100k, which obviously is pretty drastic. So definitely would recommend using Maelstroms on the back bar. If you don't have it, it's not that hard to get, you know. As you can see, I'm not using the perfected version, so it's relatively simple to get a non-perfected version of this staff. Definitely use the Inferno though, because the electric staff and stuff, you're definitely going to lose a bit of damage, so keep that in mind. Make sure weapon damage enchant, of course, flame damage enchant on front bar staff. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the abilities. Now, I don't think it's very common for people to use something like Inner Light, especially on both bars, but I highly recommend it. The damage difference is very significant without it. Maybe you find a way to keep that damage and replace that with a better ability. You know, this build is free to adjust. Hold on, this build, I had it adjusted for a little bit for some other content. So let's actually get what this would look like here. You can adjust this build, obviously. If you find something that works better, do it. Definitely. I'm not the greatest player, and actually, if you find something that works better and you think I should try it, make sure to comment it and let me know. I will definitely give it a try and look into it, because I am also trying to get better myself. Because like I said, not the greatest, but I do what I can. Impale, obviously, execute, amazing execute. You definitely, as soon as they hit 25%, you swap this out for our main spammable, which we are using concealed weapon. The reason we are using for concealed weapon is for multiple different reasons. Off balance, that's going to be very important with some of the champion points that we are using. The cost, significantly less than Swallow Soul, actually. We got 2,066 costs compared to 2,430 costs, with only 7,377 damage and 7,936 damage. And that damage is actually quite significant when actually doing a parse. You can use Swallow Soul. I like to use it in dungeon and solo content, where I'll, as you saw before, I had this slotted here. I just removed Degeneration. Still use Swallow Soul, that's fine. You know, that content isn't as serious, but I think definitely for parsing and for trials, this is the go-to. You always definitely want to keep it on your bar, because if you read when you lose sneak invisibility, major expedition ends while in combat, damage done is increased by 10% for 5 seconds. Now, show you an example. If you're sitting in this, and I have this out, as you can see, right below here, one of the squares, right? It keeps refreshing while I'm standing in the path. Sorry, the names are... As I'm standing in Twisting Path, Concealed Weapon keeps refreshing, always giving you that 10% damage done. So that's very significant, and you definitely want to always have Concealed Weapon on your bar. So besides that, we also run Degeneration on our front bar. I have tried running Dark Shade on the front bar. Instead, it kind of made my my parses a bit choppy, because I wasn't used to it. It might end up outputting more damage, but this is just what I'm more comfortable with, so keep that in mind if you'd like to try it. You can switch these abilities around, however, obviously, whatever you're comfortable with, however it works for you. Merciless Resolve. Now this is probably one of your most important abilities, and you always want to make sure that you have this up, because not only for the bonus weapon and spell damage, but for the bow proc, which is very, very important. You always want to prioritize the bow proc over our other dots, like Degeneration, Unstable Wall, and Twisting Path, which we'll get into more when we're on our back bar. The bow proc is super important. Always prioritize it over your other dots, because it does a shitload of damage. So keep that in mind. Front bar, always have incapacitating on front bar, just for the bonuses, and you know, and if you don't know, make sure you get familiar with the passives, because those are very important, like keeping incapacitating, pressure point. Obviously I remove this, lose quite a bit of about 2%, gives an additional 2% to our critical percentage, so decently significant. Back bar, shooting star as our ult. You can replace this to whatever. If you want to try and squeeze out a little bit more damage, I haven't done a parse with it yet, but you might be able to get just a little bit more damage, maybe another 1 or 2,000. If you slot in incapacitating, you might want to experiment with that. Otherwise, shooting star is a very good opener ult to parses or to bosses. I like using it. Also gives bonus magicka and magicka regeneration, I believe, from the passives. Yeah, so when you're on your back bar, you're gonna have more magicka, more recovery. So definitely worth using. Up to you. It's a flex spot. So otherwise, dark shade, very good single target area of effect damage. It's extremely strong, reduces the enemy's damage done, but it hits hard. It definitely hits hard. Barb trap, you could slot in instead channeled acceleration, but if you do, keep in mind you're going to lose a significant amount of damage. I never was really a fan of barb trap back in the day. I always thought it was kind of lame, but damage-wise, it is significantly more useful than channeled acceleration. It might be hard to adjust at first and to make sure it procs, but don't sleep on it, because on top of it just being a hard-hitting ability, obviously it will buff your weapon and spell damage, you know, ulti generation, just in general is great, especially on a Nightblade. I mean, their ulti generation is already very intense. Additional damage, like, the thing hits hard, so don't sleep on it. Twisting Path, obviously another very hard-hitting area of effect, and it also keeps up the concealed weapon 10% damage done. Want to have that. Unstable Wall of Fire with the Maelstrom Inferno Staff, extremely hard-hitting. Those two are a crazy combo. It's still very viable despite the I believe it was a light attack nerf to the Maelstrom Inferno on how it buffs your light attack. Doesn't matter, you're still going to want to run it. I definitely would not run anything else on the back bar, unless it's a perfected Maelstrom Inferno staff. So, real quick, we'll get into some of the parses. So, I have a few here. Some of them are Kjolnar, which definitely, like, this is Kjolnar. I was losing DPS. Let's go into my best parse that I've had so far, which is my 103k. As you can see, light attack, very important. Make sure your weaving is good. Concealed weapon, significant amount of damage. And then as you can see, Assassin's Will from the bow proc, third highest. I mean, it's hitting maximum 102k 1000 damage per bow shot. And the average is 79,000. I mean, that is hard hitting. You do not want to miss your bow procs. Arms of the Reliqueen from the Reliqueen set, obviously extreme amount of damage, impale or execute. Actually kind of surprised that it was this low. I think I might have started at 23% instead of 25%, so that's kind of a L for me. But look at that damage, 80k. That's more, almost more than the bow proc, and 121k. That's hard hitting. And with the bow proc, by the way, when you're parsing or doing damage on the bosses, I recommend stopping the bow proc at about 10%. Some people might say sooner, but I've in my experience so far, you get the most damage. Just keep hitting that bow proc until about then. So, and then you want to stop. I'd say about at 6%. Stop applying dots. Maybe apply degeneration if you can really squeeze it in there, if you're really good at weaving, just to keep some more damage up. That would also be worth doing. to just maximum output on your DPS. Unstable wall, without the Maelstrom Inferno Staff, this is going to be down here. It's going to do nothing. You definitely need the Maelstrom Inferno Staff for this build. Pillar Nern speaks for itself. Our other proc set, very strong. Twisting Path, very strong as well, hitting almost 1,000,000 damage. Zons, so Zon is burning and Zon. This is both from Zon. Okay, so we're hitting around like 1.4 million, maybe closer to 1.5. Not sure. I'm not working out the math right now, but you know, look at the damage per second on that. Almost 7k just from that. Now, if we want to load up a Kjolnar parse, this might be a Kjolnar parse. No, this is a Zon parse. That's Zon parse. Okay. So Kjolnar parse, 1.2 million. So only a 5-second difference in time, but that's a decent amount of damage lost, around 300k. So you can use Kjolnars if you already have it and you just want to go for it. It's going to be kind of spotty. You can hit over 100k with Kjolnars. This might be, yeah, this is Kjolnars. Look, even less damage though. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it over Zons, but if you already have it and you don't have Zons and you don't really feel like grinding for Zon, you can use it. It'll work. You still can hit 100k with it, so, you know. Now let's go to Weave. Now my Weave is pretty good, 0.04. That is extremely good. I've had my best parse was 0.02. It was a low damage parse though, so I no longer have it, but that was my best Weave on a parse. I think my best saved one is around, 0.33. So weaving is extremely important if you want to hit high DPS. Like, it's probably one of the most important things to dealing damage. I mean, that's kind of where a skill gap comes in. Now, luckily with this setup, it actually feels pretty easy to parse overall. Like, the abilities don't get too clunky, so as you can see with our damage here, at one point the most damage I've hit, now I think at some point in this parse I hit 107k. Now the most damage I hit at one point was 110k, but I wasn't able to keep it up consistently. That might just be a skill issue on my part or something I'm missing. You might be able to take this build and run with it, make it better, maybe even deal more damage, and you might just be a better player. You might be able to utilize this a lot better than I can. So keep that in mind. I mean, I'm not the greatest. 100k might just be the floor. You know, sky's the limit here. So, before I show an actual parse, to show you how easy it is to light weave. You know, hit all your light attacks. Pop degeneration, hit a bow proc. Make sure you're hitting your bow proc after your ult would be ideal. And I mean, your weave does not have to be insane, you know, like, honestly, it really doesn't. You know, I think even with a 0.2 or even a 0.4, I think you could still hit at least 95k DPS with this build. Maybe 90, which is still very good, you know. I mean, yeah, so that is my setup. Let's go ahead and show a whole parse for it, and you know, you can see how I do it, you know, what's rocking. For parsing potions, I do use heroism potions. Extremely good. I do have all the passives as well for alchemy, so keep that in mind. That definitely helps hitting the 100k goal here, is the heroism potions. Extremely expensive, 6k per, so might not be obtainable for everybody, but if you can get your hands on some of these, definitely do it, because it'll increase your damage by a lot. Otherwise, also for parsing, Ghastly Eyeball, this is what everybody's using for these parses. You know, parses are kind of almost like a little bit fake to an extent, because you know, a lot of these people who are doing these really high damage parses, even up to 130k, most of them probably aren't really that viable for doing content. So even this is slightly unviable, because having access to a ton of these without a shitload of gold and using these instead, you know, it increases your damage a lot. But realistically, I mean, I use Witch Mothers, which is going to give me more health and less magicka, which is going to decrease my damage. You know, in most content I'm using Tri Potions or even Essence of Magicka, which, you know, without all these extra alts, I'm going to lose a little bit more damage. So, you know, when I'm saying 100k DPS is meaning parses, which parse damage is always going to be slightly inflated, because a lot of these people who are doing these high damage parses, I mean, some of these builds are just a tad bit unrealistic. And, you know, part of the reason why I'm making this video is to show a much more realistic way of doing a parse, and a much more realistic way of hitting high damage in actual content. You know, I've tried using other people's builds, and no hate to these guys, because I love their content and I think their builds are great for them, but Outcast and Deltias specifically, I really like his content, and I think he does definitely have some good builds and gives some good build advice, but not all of their builds are going to work for you, just like they didn't work for me. Outcast, I tried his builds, they just don't work for me. Delphias, I've tried his builds, they just don't work for me. You know, all these builds I've tried on YouTube, they just don't work for me. So after watching all these videos and learning more about the Magblade's abilities and, you know, their passives, this is what I've come to, that I think is probably the best setup for the average user who's looking for something semi-simplistic and, you know, outputting a crap ton of damage. So, yeah, otherwise, we're going to get into a parse, and, yeah, you can see how it's done. Alright, well, that parse wasn't my greatest. 98k. not 100k. That kind of looks bad. I have a hand issue with my muscles, so that kind of makes things difficult, but you get the general consensus. I've shown my 100k parses. I did forget to go over the champion points, so they're all right here if you need to see them. Pretty easy. Exploiter, though, very important with our spammable, which causes off balance, so do keep that in mind, guys. Weaving, not my best, but just to show you how important it is, look, it was my top damage thing. Please, please, please work on your weaving. I guarantee that alone is going to put you at a different level of damage. I mean, come on now. You might be able to do more than 100k DPS, like I said. You know, if you do, let me know. It all depends on, you know, on you, really. I mean, this build is free for you to adjust, so. But, yeah, other than that, make sure you guys like, subscribe, follow, depending on what platform you're on. I have a lot more content coming, some challenge content from, like, Fallout New Vegas and Skyrim. And some other things like that. I think it'll be really cool. I'll keep up with the ESO content, of course, depending. I don't know how much ESO content I'm going to produce. It's not the most mainstream game, but I do enjoy it, and I hope that we can bring this game's joy to others, you know? Other than that, that's really all that I have for you guys. I hope this really makes it so you can hit 100k. I might be able to do this on some other character types in the future. I think Dragon Knight might be the next DPS that I really work on. Magblade, my main though, so you know, gotta show up to the Magblade first. Also, shout out to my guild, very small, but if you'd like to join it and become part of this community that I'm starting to build, let me know down below. Drop your @ I'm on PCNA. I can invite you to the guild. It's free to do so. Even for a short time, I'm gonna offer 5k gold per member you bring in, and I will be able to pay it. So just to show you, don't worry, you'll get your gold. So, but yeah, like, follow, subscribe for more content, and if you have any questions or anything, drop them down below in the comments. So I'm excited to hear from you guys and to see how this video does and see the feedback I get. If you have any advice for me, if you are a really good DPS already, feel free to let me know. You can always get better, you can always learn more. So thanks for watching, guys.